How different is life for rich and poor people in Vietnam? Today, I'm going to show you two completely different worlds. On one side, there are people living in old apartment blocks, on boats, and even on the streets. On the other side, there are gated communities, luxury villas, private security, and a completely different lifestyle. Let's see what life really looks like in Vietnam. In Ho Chi Minh City, there are around 500 apartment buildings that were built before 1975. That means many of these buildings are now more than 50 years old, more than twice my age. And in all that time, most of them have never gone through a major renovation. Residents often tell stories about pieces of concrete breaking off and falling onto pedestrians below. Sometimes people get hurt. There are no underground parking garages here. Instead, someone's ground floor space has been turned into motorcycle parking for the entire building. It's dark, it's cramped, and to be honest, it feels a little intimidating at night. There is parking downstairs, yet some residents still carry their bicycles upstairs every day. For some people here, saving a little money and protecting what they own is worth climbing all these stairs. Just look at these walls. Years of rain and humidity have slowly eaten away at the concrete. The paint is peeling off layer by layer. And then there are the electrical wires. This is one of the first things foreigners always ask me about. Is that safe? Honestly, most of the time, yes. It's simply the way things have been for decades. Most of these buildings don't have elevators, so every single day, elderly residents have to climb 4, 5, or even 6 flights of stairs just to get home. Imagine climbing these stairs every day when you're already in your 70s. Some even keep their pets there. After decades of use, some of the structural columns have cracked open. You can even see the steel reinforcement inside. These cracks didn't appear overnight. They are the marks of decades of continuous use. Space inside the apartments is extremely limited. When space inside becomes too limited, every square meter becomes valuable. Over time, the hallways become an extension of the home. Many people believe these buildings should have been rebuilt years ago. Some are now officially considered unsafe. Authorities have discussed demolition plans for years. But moving somewhere else isn't easy. So many families continue living here, year after year, despite the challenges. And yet, hundreds of families still call these buildings home, every single day. Some buildings have become so dangerous that they've been completely abandoned. The hallways are filled with garbage. No one comes to clean them anymore. For larger families, space is so limited that some even move their beds outside at night to sleep. A typical apartment here is only about 30 square meters. And yet, children are children no matter where they grow up. Their spirit is still pure. Their laughter still fills the hallways. It's summer now, so school is out. But many of these families simply cannot afford extracurricular classes or other activities for their children. After decades of use and neglect, some parts of the buildings have become so unstable that steel supports were installed to help keep the structures standing. This is the view looking out toward the main road. Down below is where residents gather to buy and sell goods. It's like a traditional neighborhood market. Let's go take a look. As you can see, the market still offers all the daily necessities people need, but most of the products here are inexpensive and match to the income levels of local residents. The vendors chat and laugh together while they work. Moments like these are a reminder that happiness can be found almost anywhere. Sometimes, having enough is enough. Clothing here typically costs between $1.20 and $5. And if you're good at bargaining, you can often get an even better price. One thing you probably won't find here is seafood. For many people in this neighborhood, it's simply too expensive. But old apartment buildings aren't the only places where low-income families live in Ho Chi Minh City. Just a short distance away, there's another side of the city. This area sits along the Saigon River, one of the largest rivers in Ho Chi Minh City. Small homes built from a mix of different materials line the riverbank. For thousands of people, this is where everyday life unfolds. Many of the families living here came to Ho Chi Minh City from different parts of Vietnam in search of better opportunities. In some parts of the area, people still rely on ferries like this to get around. They take on whatever work they can find to support themselves. Construction jobs, street vending, recycling and waste collection, anything that helps put food on the table. Some families even live and work entirely on boats like these. They sell fruit and other goods to earn a living each day. In the past, river life was once a familiar part of Vietnamese culture. Many communities lived on the water and depended on rivers for transportation and trade. But as cities modernized, that way of life gradually disappeared. Today, most people who still live on boats do so because of necessity rather than tradition. Although a small number still own homes and come here mainly to run their businesses. Over the years, many riverside communities developed naturally without formal planning. As a result, living conditions can be difficult in some areas. In recent years, many riverside homes have been relocated as part of redevelopment projects. For many families, that means access to safer housing and better living conditions. And for a city that continues to grow and change, it's a reminder of how much life here has evolved over the years. Just a few kilometers from the riverside communities we just visited, the contrast is almost unbelievable. It's like looking at two completely different worlds. Many foreigners assume that because Vietnam is a communist country, luxury neighborhoods and multi-million-dollar homes don't exist here. That's actually one of the biggest misconceptions about modern Vietnam. This is Phu My Hung, one of the most modern urban developments in the country. Most of the stores here cater to a more affluent lifestyle. Security guards can be found throughout the area. The streets are constantly maintained. There are cameras almost everywhere. Many residential areas are gated and carefully managed. A typical villa here can sell for around $1 million US. Some luxury homes can reach $10 million or more. Many foreigners working in Vietnam choose to live here as well. I've noticed a particularly large Korean community. There's even a Korean international school nearby. The area is also filled with facilities focused on health and education. Unlike many middle-income apartment developments, commercial activity here is carefully planned. There aren't rows of crowded shops competing for space. The goal is to create a quieter and more organized environment. Just look at the difference. Wide streets, clean walls, no tangled electrical wires, no motorcycles packed tightly together. Large and small amenities can be found everywhere, providing residents with a very comfortable lifestyle. Parks are everywhere. As soon as you enter the area, the temperature almost feels cooler than the rest of the city because of all the trees and green spaces. Even small things cost more here. A mini croissant for less than $1 might sound cheap to you, but compared to a 25-cent breakfast sold on the streets outside this neighborhood, it's a completely different world. No tangled wires, no concerns about flooding from the river, no worries about aging buildings. Everything just feels calm. Sometimes I wonder if some of the people living here have ever seen the places I showed you in the first half of this video. International schools are common throughout the neighborhood. Many children grow up learning multiple languages from an early age. By the time these kids grow up, they'll already speak 2, sometimes 3 languages. They'll travel before they're 10. Some will study abroad before they're even 18. It's easy to call that lucky. Really, it's just where the starting line happens to be drawn for them. A few kilometers from here, there's a very different starting line for a very different childhood. One interesting thing I noticed is that there are donation bins where residents can drop off old clothes for reuse or recycling. Small details like this can tell you a lot about a community. Even things people no longer need can still be useful to someone else. Even the car dealerships here mainly sell luxury vehicles that match the lifestyle of the neighborhood. Walking through this neighborhood, it's hard to believe that the riverside communities we visited earlier are only a few kilometers away. Yet both places are part of the same city, the same Ho Chi Minh City. Luxury cars are everywhere. And of course, like most people in Vietnam, many families still own a motorbike as well. This is actually my second time visiting Phu My Hung. There's something I have to admit. The first time I came here, I didn't just feel amazed, I felt small. Back in high school, I knew a girl who grew up in a place like this one. She'd tell me about her summer trips, flying out to watch F1 races, flying out for concerts. I'd just smile and nod like it was cool. But in my head, I was doing this quiet math. How many decades would I need to even reach the starting line she was already born on? I never finished that math. Honestly, some nights it still runs in the back of my mind. As I got older, I realized something. No matter how many times I replayed that thought in my head, my life never changed. The only thing that could change it was what I chose to do next. So these days, 3 meals a day, a roof over my head, that already feels like enough for me. The rest, I'll build myself. One trip, one video at a time. Thank you for watching. This is just one small corner of Vietnam, and there are still many more stories waiting to be told. If you'd like to explore Vietnam and Southeast Asia with me, don't forget to subscribe to Chuoi Stories. See you in the next story.